Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan. You may have said to yourself at one point or another, I should write a book. Well, our guest today, a fellow Long Islander, has done just that and wants to share details of how it came about and all about his writing process with us today. I'd like you to meet Jason Karpf. He's the author of Say What? Stories and Tales Twiddled from Phrases and Principles. Jason, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
This is going to be a lot of fun because I love authors. Tell us first, though, about your background, your career path, and I understand you were formerly a SUNY student in the SUNY system.
Yes, I was. I grew up locally out in Ronkonkoma in Suffolk County, and I went to college at SUNY New Paltz, about 45 minutes north of Manhattan. And, I want to say similar to a lot of college kids, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do outside of college, so I just kind of followed my interests there. I studied English, I studied philosophy. Towards the end of my time there, I thought, maybe I'll be a lawyer, maybe I'll be a writer. And so I kind of merged those two outside of college, and my first job was writing appeal letters for a law firm, and not a great fit, did not like it, but soon thereafter I wound up getting a job as a newspaper reporter for a local weekly chain of newspapers in Long Island, and loved it. Really fun job, and from there I just always kind of stuck with writing, got into freelance writing, doing some product advertisement, moved my career into different directions since then, but the writing always kind of stuck with me, and writing a book was always there in the back of my head.
And here you've come to the point of you're writing a book, you've written the book, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, you've written the book, and your book is entitled Say What? And it's followed by, I guess, the subtitle, or is that all part of the title? Stories and Tales Twiddled from Phrases and Principles.
Yes, that is a subtitle. So, right, the title is Say What, and then the Twiddled from Phrases and Principles is a subtitle. Like the book or the stories within the book, it's a little bit of a coy saying or core play on words. So the book is a collection of short stories, and each story is a play on the phrase or principle that inspires it or that the story's about, right? So one of the stories is Occam's razor, which is a phrase that means the simplest solution is the best solution. So in the story's about a gentleman who hates shaving, and he tries to build all these contraptions so he doesn't have to shave, and the contraptions cause scars and his face to burn and just calamity, right? And by the end of the story, he realizes he should grow a beard. So the story itself is twiddled from the phrase Occam's razor. But the Say What is a little bit of a play on the fact that each story kind of twists and turns and maybe doesn't take you where you expect to go, right? At first, you think Occam's going to build this contraption. He's never going to have to shave again, but that doesn't work out. He winds up growing a beard. So the Say What is kind of an acknowledgement towards the phrase or principle at the beginning of each story, and then the Twiddled from Phrases and Principles is the stories themselves.
Now, I have to do our audience's job because they're not here. And you happen to have a beard. So by any chance, is that story, that part of the book about you?
Good question. That's a good question. A little bit, right? I think there's personal aspects kind of through a lot of the stories, and there's definitely been times in my life where you wake up, especially on a cold winter's day, and you say, oh, geez, why do I have to shave, drag this blade across my face? So I do tend to grow a beard during the winter, but I'll shave it in the nicer weathers. But yes and no. There is personal aspects in some of the stories, and maybe that one included.
Okay, and I thank you for being so honest about that. I thought you were going to say no, and it was going to be a one-word answer. We would go on to the next one. Now, on the cover of the book, there's kind of a unique picture. And I guess what would you say? It's taken from behind a person who has kind of a multicolored, would you say, a coat or a cape on, and they're looking out. Was that taken of someone? Was that just I guess they call it a stock photo? Or was that part of the book when you wrote it and said, wait, I want that cover, it's going to convey a message? And is that you in that cover?
No, it's not me in the cover. it was just a photo I came across when trying to look for a cover that I thought would fit well, and the initial thought was just to have someone sort of thinking, you ever see folks scratch their chin and kind of look up. That was really what I was thinking about conveying, because like I said, the stories are a little bit thoughtful about the phrases, and I was looking for the right cover, and I just, that one caught my eye. I thought it was funny. I like the sort of the juxtaposition of, a lot of times folks think meditation is serious, and I think it's a young lady in the photo. She's wearing sort of this silly unicorn on top of a mountaintop while meditating. So it just caught my eye. I thought it would catch other folks' eye if they're looking for a book as well.
It's a good conversation starter, and it does catch your eye because you say, if I saw that book in a bookshop with many others, what does this cover mean? I'd at least have to open the flap and see what it's about. And then if it was a field that I was interested in or something from your writing, of course, go on to look at it and perhaps buy it. So it's doing its job because already you've got us talking about it and finding out more about it. And I'm wondering someday when you become famous, notice I said when, not if, when you become famous, is that lady going to call you and say, you sold 10 million of those books, and like Harry Potter, I'd like a little share of that. So do you ever think of that you might get a call from that person?
I'm not worried about it, because at that point, Bill, I would have sent all my profits to you for these wide and promising words.
All right,
you're
a good man. We're going to have a great show. This is going to be fun. Tell us about the book itself. What are these little short stories? How would you identify them? Are they mysterious? Do they have a secret message for us?
Yeah, good question, and I appreciate you asking. I would say they're playful, and they twist and turn, and they don't land where you expect them. At least that's what I think, or how I felt writing it. And then again, that's what attracted me about the cover. But they're short, they're easy reads. I'd like to say the content is pretty PG-13. I like to think that they're funny, but like I said, I really tried to be playful with the phrase itself. Some of these phrases, especially the principles, they come from scientific backgrounds. Peter's principles, these are science terms applied to physics and that sort of thing. And the stories are really people-driven, and I really just tried to have fun with them and be a little bit silly with them.
Do you ever take one of your friends or an acquaintance, maybe Joe, the guy at the deli, who all you know is you buy coffee from him, he says, hello, Jason, you say, hello, Joe, every day, et cetera, et cetera. Do you take anybody from there and say, I'll insert him in the book, and certainly Joe will buy it because he's going to say now there's, I'm a character in the book, and Mary, who's your secretary, and, just friends and acquaintances. Do you stick them in someplace?
Yeah, good question. And I think it relates to the question about my beard. At least for me, when I'm writing, you allow your brain to kind of open up, and there's a little bit of a stream of consciousness going on. And I think in that process, you pull from your personal experience, you pull from Joe at the deli, you pull from your best buddy, when you had that argument when you were 12 years old over a bicycle. And all that kind of, at least for me, works its way into the characters themselves. There's a few characters that I could say, hey, that's 90% of Michelle, who I dated 5 years ago, and there's other characters that are 10% this person, 5% that person, and 90% made up. So it's, at least for me, it's really just a big soup pile of personal experience and personal relationships. Now,
I think it was on Seinfeld, so I'm going to reference this first, but Jerry wrote himself a note. He was a comedian in the show, and during the night one time he wrote himself a note, and the whole show was about, he kept looking at the note, Milkman on Thursday. What does that mean? He would write for his comedy show, and he's trying to interpret the note. Why did he write that, etc.? Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and say, let's write a story where the man eats the bear instead of the bear eating the man? Or you have a great idea, but you're in that half sleep, half awake mode?
Yeah, that's a good episode. I mean, it's a great show. I know what you're talking about exactly. And yes, for me, it does work like that a little bit. I have probably 10 ideas that are written down that I'm just, if I had the time, I'd get to them. But having finished this book and put it out in the world, I just started on what would be my first novel, and it happened today. Driving here today, I had an idea. I said, oh, maybe this character brings up this in a conversation, and what I'll do is I'll just quickly email it to myself on my phone. So my email inbox, if you go in there's just these weird subject lines of Bill likes to sit on the beach, and Jill is upset about that, and so I tend to have those notes, and I email it to myself. Luckily for me, unlike Seinfeld, I have the advantage of modern technology.
I was going to say, but now do you still, because I know I put myself short notes and then I go, what did I mean by that? See doctor. Which doctor? Who should I see? Do I have an appointment? Am I supposed to make an appointment? So when you go back, do you see your own notes and say, which direction was I thinking to take that? Was it related to a holiday that's coming up that passed? Was it a old friend, girlfriend, guy that you knew in college? Or do you ever lose track of where you are with them?
Oh, of course. You should talk to my bill collectors. I'll tell you, I miss those dates all the time. But yes, that does happen. And if anything, I like to try to find the silver lining of that. And well, you write a note, we'll take action on it before you find yourself in that situation. So.
That's a good idea. Now, what actually prompted you and got you going on this, that you said, I'm going to write a book now?
Yeah, definitely.
You didn't have enough to do on weekends?
Well, funny you say that. So it really was the time during the pandemic that finally, I don't have excuses of too much to do anymore, right? We were all in lockdown, and we were talking before the show started. Writing a book is it's kind of always been in the back of my head. I think it's something I always wanted to do. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I put it on my bucket list of things to do. And then, sure enough, the pandemic had a little extra time in my hands. So I said, all right, let's actually do this. So, I really, really kind of found the discipline to sit down and do it.
And I have a ton of questions for you. But, Jason, before we go further, I'd like to let our audience know that you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Today we're talking to Jason Karpf. He's the author of Say What? Stories and Tales, Twiddled, from Phrases and Principles. So when you get these ideas and the actual time to write a book, was it something you sat down on a Saturday morning? And I know this would be probably unrealistic, but maybe it isn't. Do you write one short story at a time? Do you write 10 of them and say these are the three best? Or how does an author do that?
Yeah, really, for me, what I did was I just made sure every day I allotted time to writing, and I really was stuck to that. And no, they kind of came as they came. There's that plenty of crumpled up piece of paper in the waste bin. I found what was helpful was, writing one or writing a portion of one and leaving it, and then maybe coming back to it, and then working it out like that. One thing I found particularly interesting with this book, or writing this book, was the fact that each story was driven by a phrase or a principle. So it was almost like there was a little bit of a restrictor plate. That's probably not the best term, but that really helped drive the narrative, and it really helped focus my thoughts of, okay, how are we going to play with this? How are we going to turn this in a funny, engaging way? So again, for me, it was just really being disciplined about sitting down at a specific time each day and putting in the work, and little by little, it got there.
Do you have a favorite story in the book?
Favorite story? Yeah. Phrase that birthed it is, kind of worn thin. When life hand you lemon, make lemonade. But that particular story, I think, is my favorite.
Is it? Now, can you give us a little bit of the background of that? And not the background per se, but just what's going to happen in that, or how you tied that in?
Yeah, of course. So within the story, it's two sisters, 12 and 10, and they come across lemons, so they make lemonade, right, as the saying goes. But that's not how the phrase ties into the story. It's a little Huck Finn-ish, Tom Sawyer rather. There's trials and tribulations these two young girls go through while making the lemonade and selling it at a stand, and they kind of get into some, quagmires they didn't see that were going to come. And by the end of the story, the lemonade that comes to fruition isn't the actual lemonade. And I just, it was, I guess it just reminded me of being a young 10 or 12-year-old. You go out on a Saturday and you just kind of make your Saturday happen,
Authors have a unique way of thinking, and I mean that complimentary in case it's coming out the wrong way. Just that you'll see something and think of it differently, and I think it alerts all of us. That's why even in just a few minutes a day, I like to pick up a book and read it, whether it's one page from a church bulletin that's given me the thought for the day from a religious viewpoint, or a motivational book that, the quote of the day, or attitude of the day, or something like that. And it sounds like you see things just a little differently, which is good. It makes us see them that way.
Well, I appreciate that. It can cause trouble sometimes when you run into folks that, they're kind of set in their ways or view things in a certain manner. But I do appreciate that. Thank you, Bill. Are
any of these stories based on a true story that maybe you change the characters, but you see something, what would we call it, slice of life that goes on, and you say, I could reform that in a little different way? Someone you dealt with every day, your barber, your co-worker, something like that?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. You hit the nail on the head, and that's a good phrase, slice of life. I think the stories, a handful of them are slice of life stories, and there's one or two in particular that totally fit that description that you described. Good question there.
So there are some true stories in there, and we might find ourselves. So anybody who's a friend of Jason Karpf, just remember that he's here on Long Island. If you see a story in his book that looks like you, it might be you. What's the last good book you've read, and who's your favorite author?
Last good book I read might have been North by Brad Kessler, who is a favorite author of mine, and I've been lucky enough to, have a communicative relationship with him. He's inspired me to write and to do things. So he put out a book about this time last year, North, that was very good. And then, you mentioned how authors look at things a little different. There was a book I also just read, We Germans by Alexander, I think I'm going to get his last name wrong. I think it was Stargel. But, it was about German soldiers who were stuck in Russia during World War II and their trek home after the Germans had lost, right? So there's all these, I feel like the narrative around World War II and Germans and Germany is sort of their charge to war. And this book's perspective was, those Germans making their way home after the war. So that was another book I enjoyed recently.
I'm going to delve back into your past life in college. As a student, were you very insightful? I mean, were you the one who asked that question that nobody else asked?
Oh, I don't know. I think I was a little bit of a class clown. A little bit. I remember I'd taken this philosophy class.
Just a little bit of a class clown. So you got little chuckles, not hearty laughs.
Yeah, there you go. Not enough to get kicked out. But I remember one time we were talking, it was a philosophy class, and we were talking about miracles, and the Red Sox had just won the World Series. And I was arguing hard that was a miracle. And the professor was, rebuttaling it with knowledge far superior than mine. I think
that's another basis for stories. So you better hold it back now. Now, your book is only released electronically, correct?
Right now, yes. But, Bill, I got to be honest, talking to you before the show, you're making me rethink it. I might want to release it as a hard copy, but right now, yes, it's just out. Came out December 1st, and it's electronic.
How would someone know, to be honest, myself, I go to a bookstore, I walk around, look through it, or I get the ads from the publishers electronically. They'll come to me, read our new book about so-and-so, or you like this type of book. So how would someone know this book is out there and it might be the perfect fit for them?
Wow, it's a great question, and I don't know. This is my first time through the ringer with something with promoting a book. I came on your show. I have it promoted on some social media sites. I've been speaking about it on LinkedIn. I have it on my Patreon page. That's how I've been going about it. Really, just trying to get the word out there through my network. I know a handful of folks that work in the media field, the journalism field. So I've been speaking to them about putting the word out.
I'd like our audience to know that you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Today you're meeting a fellow Long Islander who has written his first book. My guest is Jason Karpf. He's the author of Say What? Stories and Tales, Twiddled from Phrases and Principles. The more I'm saying that, I really like that title. That kind of gets you after a while. It's not the first time you say it. First time it's confusing to me. What does it mean, twiddled? But now I see you've explained the title, And now it's catching on with me more and more. So all day long, it's going to be like that song I can't get rid of. It's going to be hanging. I'm probably going to use those words, and people are going to say to me, "What's wrong with you?"
Well, my favorite thing about the title is the way you say it, Bill. It comes out of your mouth. Wonderful.
All right, thank you. And if you want me to do ads for you, we can talk about writing up a contract later. And since you worked in a law office, you're an expert on that. Now, do you have a writing process? Like, do you sit down every Thursday morning from 9 to 12, or do you take half an hour a day or before bedtime and just write?
I do and I don't, but I like to set aside a specific time. I find the mornings are best, maybe with a cup of coffee. That's, when things are a little quiet, that's when sort of the thinking powers are there the most. But, kind of what we're talking about with the Seinfeld and the notes, I find what's best is, especially maybe just driving, is letting my sort of brain kind of work out the story in my head. And then at that point, it's a matter of like, I got to just get this on paper real quick. So a little bit of both, being disciplined and setting aside a time each day. For me, it's the morning. But I think the part I find that I enjoy the most is sort of letting my brain toy around with ideas and working it out in my head.
Do you get together with any other authors and either swap ideas or just by conversation stimulate one another?
Yeah, that's another fun part about writing. I do. There's a writing group in New Jersey I used to attend pretty regularly on Mondays. And then, just personal relationships, folks I used to work with in the journalism field that are writers, when you see them or talk to them, hey, what are you working on? Or what helps kind of spark that conversation is just movies themselves, and then talk, especially if a director has maybe a catalog, and then you can kind of dive into, well, he did this in that movie, and this movie's doing that, and, you kind of you start to explore their writing process and how it relates to yours, and then that just keeps the conversation kind of bouncing around.
I'm reading a book about a very popular TV show, and they talk about things I would never even think of because that's their expertise. That's what they do. It's the producer, it's the actors, the actresses, etc. And, how they see things, look at them, how many redos they have to do, the clothes they even wear. Do you, as an author, wind up doing something like that? Do you evaluate? Do you sit back with an old professor and say, what do you think of these ideas? Or, anything like that to bring out new thoughts?
Yeah, great question again there. In the writing group I attended, we would do that. But I mentioned Brad Kessler being an author that has sort of inspired me. And I recently saw him at a friend's birthday, and he suggested that maybe that's something I should do more often. I do think he's right, especially going through the editing process of this book. That was one sort of kick myself in the backside. I said, you know what, I should have solicited some more feedback on this. And but learning lesson. I'll do it next time around.
And how many times did the Harry Potter author get turned down? So sometimes feedback may not be all. I mean, most of us would get tired after 5 turn downs or 10, but we hear so many authors at 10, 20, 40, 50, almost everybody. And then the book became famous, and the author is worth billions. So I'm hoping that's you, because I'll get your autograph before you leave today, and then the autograph will be worth a lot. And now I see that a portion of all sales will go to the Sachem Public Library and reading clubs. That's very nice of you. Why is that part of this book?
Yeah, I knew while I was writing it, I wanted to donate a portion of proceeds to a charity. And then as I started to get to the point that I was going to have to release the book, I said, I gotta figure out how to write charity. And the Sachem Public Library has kind of always been I still have a library card there. It's just such an awesome, tremendous resource. It's been there my whole life. And I reached out to them, and I said, hey, I'm putting this book out. I would like a portion to go to charity. And the young lady got back to me, and they said they have reading programs for both children and adults that the money could go towards. So I said, yeah, definitely sign me up.
Where do you think you get most of your ideas for your books? Is it from the sayings? You said you've twiddled these from sayings, and I'm thinking back to the comedy shows that I like. There's always some saying in there. Sometimes they use it frequently, the Seinfelds, etc., that keep coming back. Do you watch old shows for that and look for them, or does it just hit you, or as you're reading something, does it pop out?
Yeah, that's another interesting thing, and I'm curious how this is just for humans in general. But I know throughout my life, sometimes you hear things or just situations, and they just kind of stick with you. They just stick in your brain and your claw, whatever the phrase is, And after a little time, I, at least for me, I'll scratch my head and say, "Well, why is this sticking with me?" And then, as far as writing about it, I'll start toying around and maybe set out to write. With this book, there was the Occam's razor. That's a perfect example. That I heard that a long time ago, and that just always kind of stuck with me. And that was probably the first. That is the first story I wrote. And then when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. That's another that stuck with me. I had this teacher that had a phrase on the blackboard in high school. Again, that's just something that sort of stuck with me. But probably about midway through this book, I was kind of running out of familiar phrases and principles. So I had to kind of go look for ones And in doing that, you kind of toss some ideas around, and eventually it just kind of feels right, and that those are the ones I ran with.
When you go to the bookstore, which section do you head for? Is it sports, mysteries, or authors that maybe most of us haven't heard of that you'd like to see somebody new come into the play?
Yeah, very, very similar process. I let sort of what is out there, kind of whatever I'm getting drawn to, that's where I'll float towards. Although, with the way Barnes & Noble's set up, I think they have the new books out front. So I'll go there. I'll stop there first, see, kind of, hey, let me give this new author I never heard of a chance, kind of flip open those pages, see what they got.
You're a good guy for doing that. Now, what are you working on anything for the future that you can talk about, or do you want to talk about it? I don't want to put you on the spot there if it's secret.
Yeah, no, hey, I appreciate you asking. Definitely. So, part of the reason I wrote this book in short story format was at the time, setting out on a novel seemed a bit ambitious, or, I was a little hesitant to do so. But having completed this book, and during the process of this book, again, I got this idea for a novel, and again, it was like, why is this idea not leaving? Why is this idea sticking around? And then I want to say over the past 6 or 8 months, I've very little been just writing down notes and interviewing some of the characters in that novel. And so, yes, I did just start my first novel.
Now, for our audience, and again, I want to say the name of your book. It's called Say What. It's by our guest, Jason Karpf, and his name is spelled Karpf. Stories and Tales, Twiddled from Phrases and Principles. Where can people find this book? If it's not in the traditional bookstore, how would they go about getting hold of it and getting a copy?
Yeah, definitely. It's available on lulu.com as well as amazon.com. It's out as of December 1st electronically. And I don't know, after talking to Bill here today, I might put it out physically. But as of right now, you could find it on lulu.com as well as amazon.com.
And what's the one thing you want to remind people about when they think of Say What?
Read, enjoy reading, have fun reading. It's a good time, and I hope this book is a good time for you.
Jason, we want to thank you today and let our audience know we've been talking to Jason Karpf, that's Karpf. He's the author of Say What? Stories and Tales, Twiddled from Phrases and Principles. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. I really appreciate it.
I'm Bill Horan. I want to thank you for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.